And welcome to Whiskey Politics. I'm Dave Sussman, your host and purveyor at whiskeypolitics.net. You can find us on Ricochet, America's Voice News, and YouTube for all your video. And for your podcast, obviously all of your favorite podcast applications. You know, a lot of folks right now on both sides of the aisle are talking about Trump's personality, how he fights. You know, some people take offense to it and other people absolutely love it. Like our good friend Evan said. He wrote the article, He Fights, in Town Hall a couple of years ago. It went viral. Well, today's guest, former deputy assistant and strategist for the president, Donald Trump, and author of his second book, just released, Why We Fight, from the good folks at Regnery Press, Dr. Sebastian Gorka. Welcome back, sir. How are you?
Great to be back, Dave. Very excited. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thanks for joining us. Now, before we get into the book, I've been watching you since you came on scene, and I've got to say, lately, you've been on. You're kind of taking on the role of a happy warrior, right? Why is that so important today?
It is perhaps the most important thing, Dave, because the other side is fueled by hatred of everything America stands for, by the history of this great nation, the wars that we fought, the victories we have under our belt. We must be fueled by love of the republic, love of individual freedom and liberty. And as a result, we must never forget what Ronald Reagan told us. You've got to be happy warriors. Let the other side be internally digested by the bile of their hatred. Everything you saw during the Kavanaugh hearings, everything they're doing to Kanye West as we speak, we must let it roll off our back like water off a duck.
You know, you talk about Kanye West, and I hate to talk about the celebrities. I really don't think they have a huge role in our politics today. But what you're seeing right now with the media and how they're responding to all of this, you know, that the heads at CNN and MSNBC are exploding over this. What did you think of this chapter?
Look, I have to disagree with you. I'm not a fan of Kanye West's products, but Andrew Breitbart nailed it. Politics is downstream from culture. And I said it already, and I'll say it again. 5 minutes on camera with Kanye West in the Oval Office is worth more than $1 billion of mega donor funding to the GOP. You're changing the political culture by when that man puts on a MAGA hat, he's changing politics. And as a result, we cannot ignore these things. Yes, the average Hollywood person doesn't know politics from a hole in the ground, but we've got to recapture the culture. We surrendered the culture to the left starting the 1960s. And now, think about it, your show, think about the Shapiros, the Crowders, the Clavens. The right are the cool counterculture now. I mean, how ironic, okay? Well, the counterculture is ours, so we've got to keep on trucking.
I love it. And I absolutely agree with you. And, you know, Breitbart sorely missed. I was at an event the other night, the Gosnell movie premiere, and we had conservatives from all over the place showing up. And it was the cool room. You know, you go into a room full of conservatives today. You know, 20 years ago, they were all wearing bow ties. You know, they were the kids you didn't want to hang out with. Right. And all of a sudden,
there's a great metric. I've been speaking at CPAC for several years, and
yes,
you're absolutely right. CPAC is the mothership, the National Conservative Annual Event. Just 3 years ago, everybody was in a blazer with brass buttons, bow tie, slacks. Now the cool kids are there, and you look at what Charlie Kirk is doing.
Yeah,
this Owens, Turning Point USA. It is it's an exciting time to be an American always. It is especially exciting to be a conservative American today.
Do you feel like the culture is changing?
Yes, absolutely. Especially with Kavanaugh. I was in Manhattan for my new book release, Why We Fight, just 2 days ago. And I'm standing in Union Station waiting for my train back to D.C. And this elderly couple looks at me, and the wife starts staring at me, and I think, oh no, it's either a Manhattan loony or I don't know what's going to happen next. And they come up to me and they start whispering, and they say, are you Sebastian Gorka? I said, yeah. I said, we're just a couple, an old couple from New Jersey, but we love what you do, and we are so angry about what they did to that nice man. Yes, it is changing, and in 26 days, God willing, we're going to cement in another 6 years of conservative recapturing of the nation.
Well, let's hope so. You know, you get a lot of people that do come up to you, and I've seen you at CPAC a few years in a row now, and you always have a throng of people around you. You're somewhat of a celebrity in your own right. But I'm sure you have a lot of people that come up to you, and they have concerns. What do you say to those who are undecided about Trump?
Very easy. I've been traveling the country stumping for pro-Trump candidates, and at the end of wherever I am, I can be in Arizona, I can be in New Jersey, I always end on the same thing. Don't get on a soapbox, don't get all preachy, don't get aggressive like the left does. Ask them a very simple question. What do you think about the last 2 years? Are you happy that ISIS is a memory? Are you excited about your 401k having a 20% more value? Are you excited that your unemployed brother-in-law has finally got out of your basement and has a job? If you like the last 18 months, how about another 6 years of it? If that's the case, vote Republican down ticket, and remember in 2020 who the president is and that we want to keep him president.
Are you getting people like this talking to you about these issues and their concerns?
Yeah, I was in California a couple of months ago, and I thought, conservative event in California. I was shocked. I had people, I can't tell you how many people come up to me, and they always said the same thing again and again and again. The outrageous gas tax that California has put on all of them, the unbelievable restrictions on new businesses, and thirdly, the insanity of the sanctuary cities. If you implement things like sanctuary cities, even the most dyed-in-the-wool Democrat is going to say at some point, hang on, why are our mayors, why is the Democrat Party protecting illegal aliens before me, an American? So yes, I think, what did we see in 2016? Remember, the night of the election, New York Times, Huffington Post, Hillary has it in the bag, 93%, 95% chance of victory. And what happened? Donald Trump crushed her. So I think there's a high likelihood that in a few weeks' time, we're going to see an even larger silent majority vote for the Republicans.
That silent majority, a term from the Reagan Revolution.
Yes.
You've got folks that are out there that don't want to be polled. They don't talk to their neighbors. They don't talk to their friends. But this guy is winning, isn't he? I mean, he's got to be impressing a lot of people.
I always use the same personal story. I flew with the president on Air Force One last June, and we went to Youngstown, Ohio. Now, Youngstown, Ohio is Steel Valley, right? I mean, that is hardcore Democrat territory. And we had a ride from the air base to the stadium, about a 20-minute ride. And on the left-hand side, all we saw were disused, shut down steel mill after disused, shut down steel mill. On the right-hand side, we saw thousands of people with the red hats, with the little stars and stripes waving their little flag. And then we get to the stadium, and the boss is in the back doing his thing. I'm out front with the team. We're taking selfies. We're talking to 20,000 people in the stadium. And I can tell you, every single one of those, 95% of those people were either former registered Democrats, their parents were Democrats, or their grandparents were Democrats. This is salt of the earth manual laborers from Steel Valley. When Donald Trump came onto the stage, well, first it was Melania and then the president. Dave, the whole building erupted. He couldn't talk for 5 minutes because they were shouting, USA, USA, drain the swamp. This billionaire from Manhattan connects with the average American. And you see it every night. How many rallies has he done in the last 2 weeks? He just comes out there. The stadium is packed, thousands of people outside. And they look at the guy and they say, hey, I might be a working class stiff, but you know what? I'm like he is. Because if I were president, I would also be eating Big Macs on Air Force One. You know, they connect with this guy.
We got Sebastian Gorka, the author of the new book, Why We Fight, and we'll be back here in just a couple of moments, going to talk about the book and a lot more. Stay tuned. And welcome back, Dave Sussman with Whiskey Politics. And we have Sebastian Gorka, the author of Why We Fight. And I want to get into the book a little bit. You know, we both grew up down the road from each other. We talked about this last time you came on the show. You in West London, a few minutes literally away from me in Northwest London, almost at the same time. We're both naturalized citizens. You also, however, lived in Hungary, if I understand correctly, right?
Yeah, for 15 years after the fall of communism, yeah.
Yeah. So from your perspective, what makes America unique?
Oh, that's easy. Firstly, there's the historic characteristic, the only nation in human history founded on the concept of individual liberty and freedom. Every other country, it's a function of geography, a dynasty, some kind of linguistic community, a tribe. Not in America. America founded in a rejection of colonialism based upon the principle that every man is equal because he is made in the image of his creator. Secondly, I didn't come up with this, but it's true. America is a kind of religion. It's a faith system, and that's why anybody can become an American. Look at my story. It's one of the chapters. It's the last chapter in my new book, Why We Fight. I tell the story of how a guy from West London ends up in the West Wing. And the day after the inauguration, the White House is empty. I decide this is my first day. I'm going to go to work. It may be a Saturday. And I get processed. I get my ID card. The Secret Service, escorts me in. And then I'm by myself because it's Saturday. Everybody's recovering.
Everybody's hungover, but you.
Yeah, I haven't drunk alcohol since my parents passed 15 years ago. So I have no hangover.
Right.
Saturday morning, January the 21st, this guy with a funny accent who only became an American 5 years ago is walking around the White House. Dave, only in America.
Yeah. Yeah, it's quite a story. It really is. And, when I take a look at what's happening in Western Europe and around the world, and you have this push towards socialism and Marxism and this postmodernist approach to things, we're seeing it starting to seep in here in the United States. Is that concerning to you?
It is. When you have the Victims of Communism Foundation do a poll, and the result is 42% of American millennials would like to live in a socialist America. 24% of them can't tell you the significance of Auschwitz. We have a problem here. I mean, how did we get here? We won the Cold War. We defeated the fascists. We won the Cold War November the 9th, 1989. And now a guy called Bernie, who can't even comb his hair and wants to turn us into Venezuela, is popular with millennials. Dave, I don't know about you. When I was 18 or 19, a guy like Bernie Sanders get up on a stage, I'm laughing at the guy. And now millennials are cheering. Yeah, we have a lot of work to do, my friend, a lot of work to do.
And where does that work come from? Education, culture, what?
Yeah. So the long part of it is the education. We've got to take back the high schools, the colleges, the universities. The mere fact that people like Bernardine Dawn and Bill Ayers, who were domestic terrorists, the Weather Underground, detonating bombs at the Pentagon, at the State. People forget this. The Weather Underground blew up bombs in the 1970s at the Pentagon and the State Department. And we let these people become college professors? I mean, what? You can't take, in most colleges in America, you can't take a classical Western civilization class. You can get a major, Dave, in big schools. You can get a major in English without having studied Shakespeare, the greatest author in all civilization. I mean, the big piece is education, but then there's the political piece, there's the cultural piece. As I mentioned, Charlie Kirk, Turning Point USA, Ben Shapiro, you get out onto the campuses, you challenge their bogus stupid identity politics, the division they wish to sow. And then, you know, the third thing that everybody can do, it's this: social media. I mean, you know what? Without my friend Sean Hannity and without Twitter, Hillary Clinton is president. There's a reason Donald Trump has 54 million followers. Everybody who watches your show, like you, like me, you should be on social media at least an hour a day. I'm on it a lot more than that. But you've got to push back on the lies. Even though they're censoring us, even though they're throttling us, every single tweet that attacks the lies means you are part of the solution and not part of the problem.
And the why we fight is what you're talking about. It's fighting up against all of this. And then,
yes,
and I want to get into the book here in just a moment, because there's some indelible parts to this that talk about history and how it relates to what is going on today as well.
Right.
By the way, where can folks find why we fight?
So you can get it at Amazon. It's Kindle, hard copy, hardback. It's Audible. I got to read the whole book this time, so you can listen to my funny accent for about 10 hours. Then you can go to Barnes & Noble. You can go to my publishers, regnery.com. You can go to Premier Collectibles for signed copies. So all the usual places, but you know, Amazon.com is where you can start. And don't forget, all the links are on my Twitter feed, at Seb Gorka, SEBGORKA.
You got quite an active Twitter account. I do follow you. I think we follow each other. Thank you.
Yeah.
And as far as what you're saying up there, there is a lot of tremendous information and news, and it isn't hardcore right-wing politics. It's what you're talking about. And I want to also ask you, you know, your sources of news as well, what you recommend people to follow so that they could become educated too. Because if you're talking about how we fight, well, why we fight is going to be based upon people becoming educated, which is what you're talking about. So
absolutely.
Yeah. So we'll be right back here. Next segment coming up here. I want to get heavily into the book with Sebastian Gorka. And folks, by the way, throw out your Twitter handle as people are watching this real quickly.
Yeah, at Seb Gorka, SEBGORKA.
Terrific. And we'll be right back with Sebastian Gorka, or Seb Gorka, at Whiskey Politics. And welcome back, Whiskey Politics. Dave Sussman here with Sebastian Gorka, the author of the new book, Why We Fight. Just talking right before the break here about where you get your sources of news and information. What are some of your favorites?
So I don't read newspapers. There was a president at the beginning of the 20th century. He said the day after I was elected, I stopped reading newspapers. If you want I personally, I'm a huge radio podcast junkie. I get most of my news from the radio in the morning. Then I have podcasts. Love Ricochet. Love Andrew Klavan's one of my favorites.
Yes,
all the guys on Salem, Dennis Prager, all my buddies there. So radio, podcasts. Then the obvious sites: Breitbart, The Federalist, Daily Caller, Daily Wire. And then I have there's a whole appendix in the book that's just about this. So where I get my information from. And I have a piece of advice. Don't look necessarily for organizations. Don't go to the fake news industrial complex. Find individuals who have a track record of really being on the ball and having quality. There's very few real journalists left in America. But if you look at people like Sarah Carter, Molly Hemingway, Lee Smith, these are people who you follow them and you will always get the stuff that's true and that nobody else is talking about. So, you know, that's where I'd start. But check out the appendix in Why We Fight.
Will do. And I think that's a great resource for everybody because it's exactly where the information should be coming from. You talk about people like Sarah Carter, who I would consider her an investigative journalist, right?
Totally. Absolutely. Well, one of the few that left. Yeah.
Yeah. So that leads me actually to a question. I was talking about this just this morning with a friend of mine. He's formerly on Ricochet. His name is Doc J. And he wanted to ask you a question. He's a huge fan. And he wants to know from your standpoint how the DOJ and the FBI will be exposed. It seems Trump wants to have some leverage on Rosenstein. Are there going to be prosecutions against McCabe, Strzok? Or are these guys going to get a pass?
Yeah, I think there's a reason that a federal team of investigators has been in Little Rock, Arkansas for almost a year now. I know everybody's very impatient. If you go on conservative news sites and you read the comments, everybody's frustrated. The Attorney General, everybody wants to see Hillary Clinton in an orange jumpsuit. I get it. But, you know, there's a difference between us and the left. The left has kangaroo courts. The left puts filmmakers in prison to cover their backside after the Benghazi disaster. We don't do that, okay? The left does that. We believe in rule of law. We believe in building a case. We believe that you must do it by the book. So patience, because I am confident that sooner or later, and it'll take some time, but sooner or later, senior figures of the Obama administration will be charged with felonies.
What time frame are you looking at, before or after the election?
After.
Why?
Because you don't want to fall into the Comey trap, right? In the next 27 days, you start raising, grand juries publicly and charging people like McCabe or Comey. You know what the left's going to do with that, right? The left's going to distract. The left is going to say this is a politicization of law enforcement. That's what Obama did. Obama politicized the FBI, the DOJ, the CIA. Oh, and don't forget, Dave, do you remember? Not just the IRS, the U.S. Park Service. Do you remember?
Yes, when the government shut down.
Right, the government shut down. Obama was such... Okay, I'm going to watch my language. The president was so reprehensible. He deployed federal park rangers to close off the World War II memorial in Washington so American veterans could not meet on a government shutdown day. We don't do that. We don't use government as a political cudgel.
Yeah, that was disgusting. I remember seeing the veterans standing outside saying, why can't we get in? It's just walking around a structure. It was so blatantly transparent, wasn't it?
Right. Some of them were in wheelchairs. Right?
Yeah.
Wheelchair.
Yeah. So do you think that there would be any, is there going to be a problem with people not being motivated enough if we're not seeing these indictments or anything else coming down? Because we've been talking about them releasing the FISA transcripts as well, and that hasn't come out.
Yeah, I think we're not going to lose steam. I think after the Kavanaugh, the trial by ordeal, you just look at social media. People who may not have been Trump supporters, may not have even voted for Donald Trump, are really angry when they saw a good man, literally a Boy Scout, be accused of serial rape and drugging women in high school. They realized you can't have the mob take over. I mean, that's one of the reasons I wrote Why We Fight. Because if we don't fight, Dave, if we don't resist politically, the mob will take control. There was a guy, you saw it just a few days ago on one of the left-wing news channels. One of the commentators said, he's confirmed Kavanaugh, he's appointed Kavanaugh, had him confirmed, and this is the beginning of a 1,000-year Reich of Donald Trump.
Yeah.
I mean, what does that do to the memory of people like my parents who suffered under fascism? What does it do to the memory of the more than 10 million Americans who fought the fascists as GIs, who fought Tojo's army in the Pacific? You're calling the duly elected president of the United States Hitler because you wanted to control the Supreme Court? It's outrageous.
Yeah, and the moral equivalence, and you go back to you're talking about educating people, the moral equivalence is really diminishing all of that and the impact of that. So when you have words like socialism and totalitarianism coming up, people really have no idea what that means.
Yeah, and when the label, this constant, he's a fascist, she's a fascist. What? When, I mean, the insanity, the lawyer, the White House lawyer sitting behind Brett Kavanaugh is accused of secretly using a white power hand sign during the hearings.
Yeah, it was insane.
And she's half Latina, and her grandparents suffered under the Holocaust. It's a Twilight Zone episode.
The whole thing is a Twilight Zone. On your book, you have it actually subtitled "Why We Fight." It's subtitled #No Apologies, right?
Right.
Was that an ode to Obama or Nirvana?
Yeah, it is well spotted. Yes. Why We Fight, Defeating America's Enemies with No Apologies. Yeah, look, what did the last presidency begin with? The 44th president traveled the world apologizing for America. I mean, everything from the ice caps melting to terrorism was our fault.
Yeah.
No more. 12 o'clock, January the 20th, 2017, basta. It ended. And American leadership is back. The American economy has never been more powerful. Our enemies are afraid of us. Our allies want to be our friends. I think it was a senator from Illinois, wasn't it, who said elections have consequences.
Yeah, I think so. He might have become president.
Yeah. They have consequences, Dave.
Yeah. So the no apologies, I love the way that you kind of put that in there, because it does remind us of the different the different perspective on how to communicate with the world, and strength and peace through strength.
Right.
From your position, I know you know a lot of people around the world, very highly respected. Forget about what some media might say. You know people. If you go onto the left-wing channels, they'll say that, we've diminished our respect around the world. But what are you actually hearing from people around the globe about this president?
So it's very easy. It's very easy. Those countries who have governments that live in the real world, that aren't globalizers, that don't think national sovereignty is a bad thing. I'm talking about places like Poland, Hungary, the people who voted for Brexit. Those communities want what? They want American leadership, and they want to be on our side. Those people, such as at the United Nations, at the EU in Brussels, who believe in creating utopia, who believe that America is evil, yeah, they have a problem with Donald Trump. But even they understand they have to get in line. Look at look at the NAFTA story. Isn't that interesting? Oh, he can't change NAFTA. Oh, Canada will never agree. Mexico's never going. What happened? We weren't even paying attention, and he closes the deal. This is the reality. When you show leadership, you send a very simple message. And when I was in the White House, I used this all the time. There's a motto from the Marine Corps. It's actually the motto from the Marine Corps division that gave us General Mattis, General Kelly, and also General Dumford, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs. And it's a very good motto for the whole American administration right now. This division says, "No better friend, no worse enemy." That's America under Donald Trump.
Yeah, I love that. And it is peace through strength, and you're building your allies and standing behind your allies. What did you think? Were you shocked this week as far as the announcement that we were going to have Nikki Haley depart in the next month? Were you expecting that at all?
I wasn't expecting it. They kept that a secret very successfully, but yeah. I have no problem with it. I mean, I find it very strange that even conservative commentators were falling into the palace intrigue, tinfoil hat garbage. I mean, when you have grown-ups thinking that Nikki Haley, one of the toughest ambassadors we've ever had, pro-Israel, pro-America, anti-globalization, they think she wrote the anonymous letter in the New York Times. I mean, you have to be smoking something, and it's not tobacco, Dave, to believe stuff like that. But these jobs, I've been there. I was a deputy in the White House. These jobs eat you alive, whether you're working for a Democrat president, whether you're working for a Republican. If you've got a family, teenage kids like she does, like I have, these jobs take a toll on you. And you watch the body language of that press conference. These two people like each other, respect each other. And she just said, hey, I did my bit, and I'd like somebody else to have that opportunity. It's exactly what she said it was. And I have to say, excuse me, she has been a warrior princess for America at the United Nations.
Yeah, she has. We're coming up for our last break here real quickly, but Nikki Haley 2024, you think there's anything to it?
All I'll say is I don't think she's going to disappear from the political scene.
Good. Good. We need her.
Yeah.
We need 10 Nikki Haleys, right?
Right.
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 All right, folks, we'll be right back here. Just last break here with Sebastian Gorka, author of Why We Fight. We'll be right back here at Whiskey Politics. And welcome back to Whiskey Politics. Dave Sussman here. Having a fascinating discussion with Sebastian Gorka. Thank you for spending the time with us. I greatly appreciate it. Your new book, Why We Fight, I want to discuss with you and have you talk a little bit about these 4 vignettes that you have in there that are very historical, that bring about, you know, who we are as Americans. Can you discuss this?
Yeah, I'd be delighted. So the book is about America's enemies and what Donald Trump is going to do to defeat them. So it's a kind of strategic overview that anybody can read. I mean, I've written it to be absorbable by the broadest audience. But as I was writing it, I realized, look, you can have the best strategy, the best military, the biggest budget, but you can still lose a war. You look at Vietnam. The key ingredient to any conflict, whether it's a trade war with China, whether it's the Taliban in Afghanistan, is the will to win. You've got to want to win, like Donald Trump. And to illustrate this point, I cut the strategic analysis up with these 4 vignettes about great American heroes that a lot of people have forgotten or never heard about. So I go back to the founding of the country. I talk about the youngest ever naval captain, Stephen Decatur, who at the beginning of the founding of our nation took the war to our first jihadi enemies, the Barbary pirates.
Is that Tripoli?
In Tripoli, off the shores of Tripoli. They captured a U.S. boat, a U.S. ship, and he led a Marine Corps covert team to capture it back or to scuttle it. And this is an amazing story that tells you, you know, not only were there heroes all over the founding story of our country, but we were fighting jihadis 200 years ago. So Stephen Decatur. Then I talk about World War II, a Marine Corps legend called Chesty Puller, who almost single-handedly turned the war around for us in the Pacific with his leadership on Guadalcanal. And that's why today, you know, what the cadences, you know, in Quantico, the cadences in Lejeune, they are still, you know, talking about Chesty Puller, and I'm going to do 20 for Chesty Puller. So to understand the Marine Corps. Then I talk about a hero, an amazing hero, an unsung hero of the Vietnam War, a Captain Eugene O'Neill, a naval aviator, shot down over Vietnam, spent 6.5 years in the Hanoi Hilton, tortured by the VC, never lost his faith in God, never lost his faith in America, is finally released and returns to service to captain a ship in the U.S. Navy. He's still alive, an amazing legend. I've met the man. And then lastly, I'm not a psychic, but it really is incredible if you think about the parallels to what happened to Judge Kavanaugh. I write about Whittaker Chambers, a man who never wore a uniform, never carried a gun, but he is a great American hero. He was Kavanaugh'd decades before Justice Kavanaugh was even born. In 1948, Whittaker Chambers, the author of the incredible book Witness, a former communist, sees the light and wants to testify to the people he knows, the communists he knows, are hidden inside the U.S. government as agents of the Kremlin because he worked with them. He knows who they are, including Al Jahis. He goes and gives the first ever televised congressional testimony in 1948. And what happens? The left accuses him of being a homosexual, an alcoholic. They accuse him of being responsible for the death of his brother. All lies. Later, he is proven completely correct. We have the Venona decrypts that prove Al Jahis was an agent. And this man stood up for the truth and never gave up. If you were surprised, if you were shocked at what happened to Justice Kavanaugh, read Why We Fight and find out how the Democrats were doing this 70 years ago.
Yeah, it's their MO. It really is. It truly is. It's fascinating. Folks can find your book, Amazon? Again, where can they get your signed copy? What was the name of that?
Right, so Amazon or Barnes & Noble for the regular copy. And if you want a signed copy, premiercollectibles.com. I just did a signing for them in New York. Some people love signed books, selfies. I don't get it. But anyway, if you want a signed copy, premiercollectibles.com.
And this is with Regnery Press, right? You work with Margie?
Yeah, the great publishers, Margie Ross and all the great
Yeah, she's fantastic. We've had her on the show. And folks can also find you on Twitter, again, Seb Gorka, at Seb Gorka.
Twitter and Facebook, it's Sebastian Gorka on Facebook. On Twitter, it's at Seb Gorka, SEBGORKA.
Sebastian Gorka, this is a conversation we could have for another hour. There's so many more questions that we have for you, so maybe we can have you again down the road but I greatly appreciate you taking the time. Everybody follow this man. This man's Twitter feed is just a collection of news, and you want to stay educated, you've heard his sources, and you can get them all in one place at Seb Gorka. So thank you so much for taking the time. Greatly appreciate it, and thank you for everything that you do. Folks, go out and get Why We Fight, Sebastian Gorka. And folks, continue to follow us at ricochet.com, YouTube, America's Voice News, and all of the podcast applications that are out there, iTunes, Stitcher, and Google Play. And we'll be back again real soon. Again, special thanks to Sebastian Gorka. I'm Dave Sussman, signing off. Cheers.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you.